Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 30th of April. Where has the month gone? We are in week, 5 of lockdown here in the UK, and I hope everyone, wherever you are in the world, that you are safe and well, and that you are continuing to find the upside in all of these difficult times. So welcome. It's been a really busy and fun week watching your replies coming in over the Facebook page to our little competition that we've been having to choose the most popular ancient plays, which, if you remember, Jeremy Davies is then going to consider seriously in terms of his choice of what he's going to put on actually on the stage in 2021 when we can all go on a group outing to see that production. So what we've been doing so far is we've had a vote going on the Facebook page, and I have the results here in front of me. Hello Linda, hello Lorraine, hello Patricia, thanks everyone for tuning in. I have the results in front of me, and you have some clear favourites. I'm not going to release the results as we speak, but we have some clear favourites here of the particular plays that you have got. And what we are going to do to Jeremy is we're going to offer two different options, right? Because it's very clear that you favour your tragedies over your comedies. Absolutely understandable. So we have a top four. We have a top four tragedies from this vote, right? But we are going to have another quick vote. We're going to have a quick fire round starting tomorrow, Friday the 1st of May, on the Facebook page, and we're going to have quarterfinals on Friday, we're going to have the semi-finals on Saturday, the final on Sunday, and then we're going to announce the winner on Monday, right? And we are going to do this time round as pairs. We are going to pair up the tragedy and comedy into different pairings, and that pair, you're going to vote for a pair. So you're going to vote for one tragedy and one comedy versus another tragedy and another comedy in the quarterfinals. So tomorrow night, Friday, at 7:30 p.m, the four quarterfinalists pairings will go on display on the Facebook page, and please vote. You'll have 24 hours to vote. Then at 8 p.m. on Saturday, the notification of who's made it to the semi-final will go live at 5 o'clock on Saturday, and then votes will open at 8 p.m. Kind of thing. So that would be absolutely fabulous. And then kind of on Sunday, the final pairing, a competition for the final round will be announced, and again, kind of at 8:30, that will be going live for you to vote. So what are going to be the pairings? So the first quarterfinal round is going to be between, on the one hand, Lysistrata and Antigone. So I've put those together, kind of two plays about the role women can have when they subvert their normal position in ancient society. So Lysistrata and Antigone versus Ecclesiazusai and Medea. So again, Medea, a very powerful role, but Ecclesiazusai, the idea of the women trying to decide and take control as part of a political assembly and thinking through what is the best course of action to do, as in some ways in the Medea and the chorus do, as well as they backwards and forwards how they should act. So quarterfinal 1 will be Lysistrata and Antigone versus Ecclesiazusai and Medea. Quarterfinal 2 will be the Frogs and the Bacchae. So two plays about Dionysus, a comedy with Dionysus in, and a tragedy with Dionysus in, versus the Knights and Oedipus Rex. The Knights is the comedy where it's all about the old figure of Demos, the democracy who's being made a mockery and a fool of by his slaves, versus Oedipus Rex, where the political establishment is being wrecked by the actions of one person within Thebes. Quarterfinal 3 is going to be Wasps and Electra. So Wasps is the comedy where the guy who can't possibly not go and get on the jury selection. He wants to be juror. He wants to be juror and executioner the whole time. And it's a comedy around someone who's addicted to adjudicating. And Electra, a play about deciding what is and what is not the correct action. So that's one pairing. Versus Thesmothoryphae and the Trojan Women as another pairing. So Thesmothoria is, of course, the women going to one of their great festivals, the Thesmothoria. Trojan Women, about another group of women banding together in terrible circumstances, dealing with a very uncertain future. And then we've got the Clouds and Hippolytus versus the Wealth and Persians. So again, these are plays about individual choices and actions. The Clouds very much taking the mickey out of a particular Athenian politician that was in the audience and his influence and his decisions on what's happening in the world. And then we've got Hippolytus, which again is a tragedy really surrounding kind of the unfair actions, if you like, that are visited on one person. Then the Wealth is one of Aristophanes' later comedies, and that's thinking about well, is wealth blind? Well, wealth is blind in the play, and even if you give wealth his sight back, he's still visiting inequality in society versus the Persians, which is, of course, one of the historical dramatic tragedies surviving, thinking about a moment of great inequality between two great armies, right? So we've got those different pairings, and that gives you a little bit of sense of kind of why I've paired them together in the way that I have. Good afternoon, Nicole. Good afternoon, Susie. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. So just to recap, we are running our quarterfinals starting tomorrow to at 7:30. Voting will start, and those are what we want you to do is vote for a pairing in each quarterfinal. So they'll all be listed up on the website page, on the Facebook page, and that gives you a little bit of sense of the different kinds of pairings, different reasonings behind them. So you have to choose your favourite pairing. We're going to run the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and the finals over the next 3 nights, so that by Monday we have a winning pair. So we can then offer up to Jeremy both a winning pair of a tragedy and a comedy, but equally we will present him with your favourite tragedies as well, so that he has both versions to choose from. So hopefully you'll be enjoying that voting over the next 3 nights. I can't wait to see what you come up with in your pairings. Have a bit of a research of the plays, have a look at them, see what you think of the different pairings and of the different plays indeed. So I can't wait to kind of see how that unfolds. And it's also been really interesting and really lovely to hear your positive response to my reading of Poseidon from the Trojan Women, which was done for the actors of Dionysus' Daily Dose of Culture during the lockdown, which went out last Saturday weekend. So thank you very much indeed for the kind of thoughtful feedback of that. And some of you have even been writing in suggesting that perhaps we can do a few more of these dramatic readings, both of any kind of ancient writing, of whether it be comedy, whether it be tragedy, it could be some poetry as well coming in. Now I'm very, very happy. I'd love to do this. Kind of reminds me of my sort of thespian days when I used to be on the stage lots and lots when I was at school and through university as well. And so what we will be doing after we've finished our quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals competition over this weekend and into next week is we will be starting a new competition where you get to suggest your favourite passages from particular ancient plays or wider senses of ancient literature, and we will be running a competition for all of those to then work out what are the top 5 or so, and then I will be doing dramatic readings to the best of my ability of those 5. So that's something coming up for next week in the lockdown after we have had our favourite plays competition. Rightio. So that's kind of wetting your whistle for some of the things that are coming up to keep us all entertained and enjoy our time during the lockdown. But of course, at the same time, you have been asking some fabulous questions and coming in with your great questions. So let's, without any more ado, let's get on with some of those. Catherine Anstey has been asking, I'm sure there have been many, but what is one work of art, ancient or modern, that blew you away? And I think this is a fabulous question. And I think it's something that kind of we might hold back, Catherine, if you're happy with this, for the week after next, because I think it would be really worth having a Facebook poll on this as well to see what your favourite works of art are as well, ancient or modern, that have really blown you away and why, right? What they have meant to you and why. Perhaps it was something that you saw for the first time at a really important point in your life, or something that you've had worked hard to get yourself to a location to be able to see. Sometimes perhaps it was just something that came around the corner totally unexpected and as a result blew you away. And I think for me, if I was thinking about it just in response to Catherine's question, and I'd like to think about it some more actually, and think about some of the modern works of art as well that have really chimed and meant something to me. The one that I perhaps wasn't expecting to blow me away or affect me as much as it did, partly because I thought I knew everything about it, right? This was the Serpent Column from Delphi. Now, obviously, I spend a lot of time thinking about Delphi and have done for many years. And so I know about the Serpent Column, and I've studied it, and I've seen drawings of it, and I've seen where it was supposed to be located at Delphi, etc., etc. But I remember viscerally going to Istanbul for the first time, which was in 2009. And I had just handed in the manuscript of the first book that I'd ever written, a trade book that I'd ever written, which was From Democrats to Kings. And the trip to Istanbul was a sort of a bit of a kind of fantastic, we've handed in, let's go celebrate trip. And it was great to be there visiting and exploring Istanbul with friends who know kind of Istanbul much better than I do. And I was very luckily being taken around to see the sights. And there in the Hippodrome, as many of you will know, in Istanbul, stands the remains, the twisted, broken remains of the bronze serpent column that was once at Delphi, dating back to the 5th century BCE. Now, it's hardly in its best condition, hardly in its heyday at all in any way, shape or form, and it is completely forgotten and very, very sad in the sense that people chuck litter into the sort of basin where it's now sat below ground level, and next to the obelisks on either side of it from Egypt, it looks a very, very poor cousin. But that is absolutely a monument that took my breath away, even though I thought I knew everything there was to know about it. Just standing in front of it and being faced with something that was truly 2,500 years old, that had seen everything happen that column has seen happen to it in its time, absolutely blew my mind. Lizzie Sinclair, you live in Istanbul. You've spent lots of time in the Hippodrome where the column is located. Amazing. Lizzie, what do you think when you walk in and see those twisted shards of bronze kind of almost forgotten and left to one side? Let us know what you think. Let us know what has blown you away. Rebecca, I like the Etruscan boy sculpture. It's long and thin like a shadow, so modern, blew my mind. Because, hang on a sec, I need to press the button to find out what you say, because it changed my understanding of ancient art. Absolutely fantastic, Rebecca. Thank you so much indeed for letting us know. Let us know what works of art, ancient or modern, have completely blown your mind, and we'll hold a bit of a show and tell on the Facebook page in the weeks to come. So that was one of the things that really got me. I wasn't expecting it to have the effect on me that it did. And I remember visibly in Istanbul that day just wanting to stop and just stand there and just soak it in and just be in the presence of something that had such history, if only bronze could talk. Catherine, gosh, you're on, just loved Istanbul too in the column you're talking about. That and the cisterns. Yeah, what a city. Istanbul, what a city. Perhaps we should also do this in future weeks. Another great idea. This is clearly an ideas week. We should be taking our favourite cities across the world, with ancient kind of remains and ruins, and we should be focusing perhaps a bit of our discussion each week on one of those cities and doing a bit of a tour around the key locations. We can do a kind of, if you like, virtual tour of some ancient cities and discuss the bits of it that we really like. Patrick Hayes, you like the tomb of the diver in Paestum? Absolutely. My God, that is brilliantly set up in the museum that it's located. I remember as well seeing that for the very first time when I was on a tour of southern Italy, with my parents back in, 1999. Yep, that's when it was, 1999, kind of seeing the tomb of the diver and loving the kind of the vibrant colour, the simplicity of it, as well as the colour and the sense of kind of exhilaration and calm that we can all imagine when we dive off something high and we're in that moment flying through the air like the diver is, betwixt and between our takeoff point and our landing point. That's what really got me about that one. Patrick, thank you so much for your suggestions. Brilliant. Let's keep them coming in. Catherine, great question. Thank you so much indeed. Right, we have a question from, this was an interesting one, Linda Montague. So Linda last week asked us about who would be our Han Solo and Chewbacca kind of partnerships from the ancient world. And before I answer your current question, Linda, just to follow up on this one, because we've had a question come in over the week from Cassandra Cooper, who's been asking, all the couples you came up with, the pairings you came up with were male pairings, and what about some women? Where are the women in all of this? Absolutely, Cassandra, Cassie, you kind of, what a brilliant classical name as well, if I may say. We should be thinking about some female pairings as well. So I've been here thinking about it, and you're absolutely right. We can come up with lots of I could immediately think of lots of male-female pairings that would be Han Solo, Chewbacca kind of thing. So I was thinking about, Pericles and Aspasia. So Pericles and kind of his muse, if you like, his partner Aspasia, who is often credited in some of the histories, and people argue this backwards and forwards, with Aspasia actually possibly being the motivator for some of Pericles' key decisions and ideas. But also people point to Queen Gorga of Sparta, who was the wife of Leonidas. Leonidas, the guy we were talking about, elderly man who went to defend Thermopylae. Queen Gorga, who was the kind of, as you see in the film 300, quite a mover and shaker within Sparta herself, absolutely. What about this one? And this one kind of, I absolutely love this pairing. It's a father and daughter. So Scillis and Hydna. Right? Now, Hydna's the daughter. Now, these were kind of totally normal, kind of not rich, not rulers, not aristocrats, living up near Thermopylae, but they were divers. They were deep-sea divers. The father was a deep-sea diver, and he taught his daughter how to deep-sea dive. And when the Persians invaded at 480, and they came with their massive fleet, the fleet that was anchored offshore near kind of Artemisia, so kind of Thermopylae, Artemisia, northeastern Greece kind of area, and while the 300 were battling away kind of on the land, Scillis and Hydna supposedly swam out in stormy seas, a good distance, 5-10 miles potentially out at sea in stormy seas, to then dive deep down under the sea and cut all the anchors of the Persian ships so that they were then dashed to pieces on the rocks, and a number of the Persian fleet were put beyond repair. Now, this story was so famous in antiquity that actually one of the first monuments post the Persian invasions to celebrate the Greek victory at Delphi was to Scillis and Hydna. Absolutely brilliant. Kind of what a great pairing, kind of who managed to change the course of history because they could deep sea dive. So Cassandra, Cassie, I hope that is some pairings, but you have some people have been suggesting Apollo and Artemis, absolutely. Brother and sister duo, brilliant idea, fantastic. But can anyone come up with, because I am struggling, I admit, with actually just a female-female? Who's the Han Solo and Chewbacca completely of the female world? Who could we put together and showcase as that pairing? Lots of powerful individual women on their own that I haven't mentioned. Penthesilea, Queen of the Amazons, and the Amazons themselves, of course. Or any number of kind of influential women, and quite a lot of influential pairings of husband and wife, father and daughter, brother and sister. But can we come up with two who are just female, both of them? Ooh, kind of thing. So that's another question for you guys. Linda's kind of Isis and Hatshepsut. Okay, Latifa, Hypatia and Orestes, absolutely. I mean, the one I came up with slightly, which I thought about, was Antigone and Ismene. Right, two sisters, there you go. Now, they're not quite as powerful as one another. In the play, of course, Ismene is always more reluctant to go to the lengths that Antigone is willing to go to. But I was thinking that's a great sister pairing, Antigone and Ismene. From Connor, Anna and Dido. From Sophie, Sappho. And yes, kind of who's Sappho's sidekick? Who is the Chewbacca to Sappho? Now, that is a great, great question to come up with. Kind of, I wish I could put that into a student exam. I think that'd be brilliant. Daniel Williams, go east to the Chung sisters. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, indeed. Brilliant. Okay, so that's got you thinking. Anyway, Linda's current question this week is, if you could travel back in time to any ancient civilization and warn a prominent figure of an impending disaster, who would you warn and what would your warning be? Now, this is kind of interesting because there's been a lot of what-if counterfactual history here. You may well, and I wanted to flag it up with you, you may well have seen the recent article that Paul Cartledge has done. It's a podcast, in fact, on History Extra, which you can have a listen to, and we flagged on the Facebook page of Alternative History. What if Alexander the Great had lived longer? Right, so what would have happened if he hadn't died at the tender age in his early 30s? What if he'd gone on to not only complete his conquest of the East, but perhaps, as some indicate, started off on his intended then conquest of the West, kind of, etc. So that's a great podcast. Johnny Wilkes is talking to Professor Paul Cartledge, and you can also hear Paul talking with Dan Snow on the History Hit right now as well. So go and have a listen to that. That's up on YouTube, one of the most recent History Hits as well. We'll put the link on the Facebook page. So there's a lot of what-if history going around at the moment. And I was trying to think of, so what would be the prominent impending disaster that you would want to warn people about? Ooh, like kind of thing. I would go with, Pompeii. You could try and warn people in Pompeii, get them out. Julius Caesar of his impending assassination, although he was kind of warned about it and he kept ignoring those warnings. Alexander the Great, would you warn him about his over-the-top lifestyle and completely overdoing it? Perhaps was going to lead him to an early demise, but I think kind of in some ways he knew that already. So great, tell us about what impending disaster from antiquity you would try to warn somebody about and as a result change history. So Linda, thank you so much indeed for that. That's brilliant. If we quickly take a break from the questions we've had in the news, many thanks to Latifa Walker for sharing this. From the Observer, Mediterranean shipwrecks reveal the birth of globalization in trade. British-led team reveal a spectacular discovery. It's a fleet of Hellenistic, Roman, early Islamic and Ottoman wrecks that were lost 2 kilometers below the waves of the Levantine basin between the 3rd century BC and the 19th century. Underwater archaeology is really, really taking off, and it's so brilliant now that we have the ability not only to discover these places, these wrecks, but then investigate them without necessarily having to bring them up. We can find out so much more about them while they're at the bottom of the sea, kind of thing. Be absolutely brilliant to know more about that and what's coming out of that. What else have we got? From The Guardian, Pompeii ruins show that the Romans invented recycling. You may have come across this. The burning of the Library of Alexandria. You would try to warn them about the burning of the Library of Alexandria, absolutely of impending destruction. The wooden horse at Troy, Graham, brilliant. You'd be like, look at it. It's not a gift, people. Don't you get it? Although, as I think Cassandra just said, Cassandra did try to warn them. There's lots of occasions in antiquity when warnings were ignored. And I think what we should learn about this is that we shouldn't ignore warnings that are given to him. Sophie, you're talking about the Laocoon. Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. There we go. Kind of another person trying to warn people of all the impending doom. The Guardian. So Pompeii ruins show that the Romans invented recycling. So Professor Alison Emerson has been working on this, looking at the rubbish. I love this, that we can find out so much from a community's rubbish. Rubbish was piled up along almost an entire external wall on the city's northern side, right? But the mounds were several meters high and included bits of ceramic and plaster which could be repurposed as construction materials. Right, we thought these had happened when an earthquake struck the city, but actually these are purposely piled up bunches of rubbish on the external side of the city, which seem thus to have been used for some kind of recycling. Absolutely brilliant. Kind of this. Jonathan suggesting Paris. Just tell him no, Helen. Don't go after Helen. Don't do it. Don't do it. Shoot the guy who killed Archimedes. Well, preferably before he kills Archimedes, right? And certainly not afterwards. Playmobil and classical antiquity. This was another great thing. That's what's new. The new Playmobil catalogue for Greece has been released online, announcing a series of boxes inspired by classical mythology for September 2020. The German brand will thus offer, for the first time since its launch in 1974, a range of games based on Greek antiquity. I mean, we were so ahead of Playmobil realising that Greece is the word, right? This is absolutely brilliant. I'll be putting in my order straight away. And equally, I wanted to flag with you because the Roman Society have got their summer placement scheme. They're going to hope to run the scheme in a limited sort of way with placements held in the summer, if possible, or later in the year, or definitively in 2021. You can hold them at the following institutions: the British Museum, the Great North Museum in Newcastle, or the Institute of Classical Studies. There'll be bursaries as part of the contribution towards travel or living expenses. So deadline is the 31st of May. You've got some time to get involved there. In terms of resources online, if you're homeschooling right now with everyone, then don't forget the Classical Association has just completely redone and relaunched all of their online teaching resources. So do go and have a look at those. And equally, the Classics for All directory is bringing together a number of support and resources available to teachers across the country at all different levels. The directory brings together details of 25 subject associations that are all producing their own resources as well. So do go and have a look at that. And then we will be flagging the Stupid Ancient Histories videos as well on the Facebook site. So please go and have a look at that. The British Museum this week, many of you will have seen, relaunched its online collection, which was absolutely staggering. Gorgeous, gorgeous photos of key objects to go and have a look at. Really, really worth getting involved with. And equally, if you want to listen to some more lectures online, there's the podcast that we've already flagged, but particularly the Aegis Society has its first ever lecture online, Keros Island. Now, some of you may be familiar with this excavation, which is really just coming now into the public domain. It's been conducted by Professor Colin Renfrew, Dr. Michael Boyd, and Dr. Evie Margaritis, but they've been working for several years. The academic publications are now starting to appear, and it's also beginning to appear kind of in the sort of public perception. But this excavation is really completely unhinging and unearthing and turning on its head our understanding of some of the earliest periods of Greece's history. And Keros Island is the site of this religious sanctuary that was built, which has required them to move tons and tons and tons of marble from other islands to this island to be able to build this purpose-built sanctuary. So we are talking about something like the earliest and biggest kind of man expedition to move literally mountains of marble from one place to another to be able to construct this sanctuary. So go and have a look at that online lecture about Keros Island, because it really is going to be one of the great sites going forward, and more about that coming out. I'm loving your suggestions about impending disasters that you would like to try and avoid if you can. Keep them coming in, and we'll put up a good list on the Facebook page. We have time. We have a little bit of time for a couple more questions. So Annette Oliver was asking about, following on from the reading of Trojan Women, do you know how the Greek audiences would have reacted to the play? Would it have been with sympathy for the women, or with shame, or indeed pride as the descendants of the conquering Greeks? Or would there have been a feeling of, that's just what happened to women in war, so they should shut up and accept their lot? Really interesting series of different responses, Annette. And I think potentially there would have been people in the audience having a number of them. We have to remember that probably, I'm on the side of thinking that the ancient theatre in Athens, only men were attending the plays, watching the plays. We have to remember also that all of these roles are being played by men as well, right? So there were no female actors at the stage in the 5th century. So we've got a sort of all-male auditorium, if you like, and male cast portraying these fates for this group of women. And so we have to think through how that would have added to and complicated the series of responses. In addition to that, people have argued for quite a long time about what was going on in Athenian history at this point, and would that have impacted on the way people came to look at this question? And I think it definitely would have done. Now, sometimes there's quite a close link drawn between what the Athenians have been doing as at the head of their own empire, and don't forget, this is kind of at a period of time when Trojan Women comes out when they're in the middle of the Peloponnesian War. They are desperately trying to keep their different allies, the allies of the empire, in check, and the Athenians have very recently actually gone and kind of voted for slaughter. They have slaughtered all the men, and enslaved all the women, and they have done very similar things to which the Greeks did in Troy, which is the subject of this play. So in that sense, some people really want to create quite a tight link between these two events, and see the playwright Euripides as directly responding to Athenian actions out in the battlefield, which every Athenian sitting in that audience would have been well aware of. And others would prefer to see just a much more general link between the atrocities that are committed during war that have been dragging on for some time now, and how that would impact on people's reactions to seeing these women and the horrific fates that await them. So I think there's actually quite a mix of things going on here. I think there would have been a certain amount of pride. These are the descendants of the Greeks who were victorious against the Trojans, and to a certain extent, this is what one expects to happen in war. But the way Euripides draws the characters, making these women often so rational, understandable, empathizable with, offering up many of the arguments which the Athenians themselves would put forward in any kind of given context, and making some of the Greek characters, some sympathetic, but some absolutely outrageous. In that sense, I think would have complicated reactions and made it not quite so easy to simply go, yeah, that's exactly what would have happened. And of course, that's the whole point, isn't it, of the great plays, the great tragic plays. They didn't present something simple and easy, which you could go, yeah, fine, and walk away from. Their whole point was to take you through a massive emotional journey so that you ended up at the end of the day with catharsis, with a sort of cleaning or a sort of inner peace that comes from having been completely overwhelmed with all the spectrum of emotions. So I think very much, Annette, love your question. And I think kind of a complicated series of reactions, or even though it was an all-male audience, by men, played by men, for men, etc., a complicated set of reactions which crossed that entire spectrum that you were outlining. So everyone, wow, we're almost out of time. Kind of a couple of last things I wanted to flag with you. Ancient Worlds, my book Ancient Worlds, has been on Kindle this month at the bargain price of 99p, and today is the last day that you can get it at this bargain price, so don't forget that if you can, and if you haven't got it already. And next time, what are we going to be doing next time? Next time we will be doing a Facebook live Q&A on the 7th of May, so we will be back in a week's time, Thursday. We're going to go for 4 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock, so we're pushing it back into the later afternoon again. I look forward to seeing you very much at 4 p.m. on the 7th of May. In the meantime, just a quick reminder that the ancient plays, your favourite ancient plays, quarterfinals, semi-finals and final in these pairings, where there's a tragedy and comedy as a pairing versus another comedy and tragedy as a pairing, will be going live from tomorrow. So vote over this weekend, and we will have the winners to be announced, and we'll be talking about the winners and getting Jeremy to give his reactions and thoughts for the Facebook Q&A next time on the 7th of May. Then we will also be, next week, starting off competition, thinking about what great passages from ancient literature are your favourites, and then I'll be doing some recordings of those. And then, of course, we've got a kind of now for the week after that, brilliant questions. You've come up with a great idea that we can find our ancient cities, our favourite ancient locations, and do sort of some virtual tours together of them. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with in the competition of the ancient play competition over this weekend. In the meantime, stay very safe. Have a lovely end to the week and weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care of yourselves and everyone else. Bye-bye.